All right, so my next guest is Phil Bailey, affectionately known as a Cat in the Hat. Phil is a friend, he's a mentor, he's an author, he's a writer, he's a heck of a businessman, and he's a lot of fun. Phil's Australian, so I met him when I lived in Sydney, Australia for 10 years. In fact, Cafe Pacifico is the bar we used to drink at. After we finish work, we go down the hill and spend time with Phil and his Agave collection. Phil was an art student, but somehow fell down the Agave rabbit hole and wound up meeting Thomas Estes. I believe he did a mural for him in Amsterdam at the first Cafe Pacifico before they became partners in Sydney and elsewhere in the world. I don't know many people that know Agave better than Phil. He not only knows it, he truly loves it, and you can feel it when you're with him. He actually became a Mezcal ambassador, so to the category of Mezcal in Mexico since 2017. He's done countless trips, he and Thomas, across the country, zigzagging back and forth, and you can catch some of those trips in his amazing book, They Love. He also released recently with Thomas's son, Jesse, The Tequila Ambassador, another great book. So without further ado, we're going to hear from my good friend, Phil Bailey himself. Welcome, Phil, to the Hospitality Outliers podcast. I'm delighted to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Sean. Always a pleasure to be with you anywhere on this planet.
Awesome.
So let me tell you about that first book, Agave Love.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Originally, I was going to do this book, and I worked probably 15 years on that thing, and it was going to be all about tequila, how you make tequila, and all this sort of stuff. And after a while, I just went, what the fuck? I mean, excuse the French, but I'm just going like, what the hell? I don't make tequila. There's people who know this better than me. I'm just going to write about what happens when you drink it. So this was my journey of discovering tequila, meeting Thomas Estes, setting up Cafe Pacificos, and traveling through Mexico, by the hair of your teeth, basically.
Yeah. Well, let's tap on that, Phil. You talked about Thomas Estes and meeting him. So, you've said in the past this chance encounter and this amazing friendship that occurred, but I don't know two people more intertwined. Like, whenever someone talks about one of you, the other comes in the conversation, and it's this beautiful relationship you guys had. So tell us how that got started.
My formal training was in the arts, painting. I was living in South Australia, and I decided to go to Europe for 6 months. And ended up, for some reason, in Amsterdam. I was actually on my way to Paris, but someone said, go to Amsterdam. So I went there for a weekend, stayed for 9 years. But while I was there, I was doing street murals, and that's how I met Thomas. And he actually came and asked my partner and I to paint a palm tree on the wall of his Cafe Pacifico, the first one, which had opened in 76. And originally I'm like, no, I don't want to do this now like that. But anyway, I ended up going down there, walking into his venue, and I just went, this place is beautiful, because it was just really felt like walking into Mexico. And I'd never been to Mexico. But, I knew palm trees because we've got plenty of palm trees in Australia. Anyway, that was like the beginning of the journey. And I started as the residence artist. I could eat as many tacos and drink as much tequila as I liked. Took me like 6 months to paint this palm tree. It was like 3 palm trees. We became really good friends, and ended up, he and I opened 18 tequila bars, Mexican restaurants across 6 countries over a period of some 40 years or something. And we worked together on Tequila Ocho, and we worked on all these different projects. We traveled around the world spreading the Agave love. I mean, it was just one of those chance meetings that he became more of a brother to me than my own brother. Wow. It was pretty crazy.
That's beautiful, man.
And so the book, Tequila Ambassador, originally he'd done this book with Simon Difford, and there were some things about it that he wasn't completely happy with, because the editor for Simon he'd edited it in a style for the industry, but he'd changed a lot of Tom's writing, and Tom's got a really nice style of writing, very personal. And so I just said to him, and it took me a number of years to convince him. I said, Simon actually owned the book. Thomas owned the text. So I said, you've got the text. I've got the photos. Why don't we just redo this book? And that happened in 2016 in Hong Kong. And I finally convinced him. And it took, probably 5 years to put it together. And we got Mitch involved to help edit. And then we got Wonk Press to publish it. And it was like quite a journey to get there.
That's amazing. So both of these books are just incredible and put you, not just in Mexico. I open up the page here and there's Julio's mom at Tommy's, and like
Yeah,
suddenly you're in
yeah.
San Francisco and at
I
the
love
coolest little Mexican restaurant outside of Mexico. So Phil, in a second, I want to drill down into Cafe Pacifico because I find it fascinating what you guys did and how you did it. And I think we can learn a lot from it. I just want to share with the audience my perspective of it as initially like an outsider, just a customer who came in. I owned a few bars up the road from them in Sydney, and there was a place my staff always went after work. And in Sydney, there were plenty of places where your staff went after work, and not always a place that you wanted to go to, right? They just wanted to hang out and drink a few shots and a beer before they went home to go to sleep. And it wasn't always my scene, but my team convinced me one day to come down with them and drink tequila. And I said, I'll come, but I do not drink tequila. And I've had tequila, it's terrible. And they go, Sean, you got to try this guy's tequila. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know there was good tequila. So I went down for the tequila and I walked in the room, and a lot of bartenders and servers late night are pretty unruly, and it can be pretty seedy. And I just felt like there's a beautiful vibe in this place. And one of my staff said to another young staff member, said, hey, it's kind of a code of conduct here, and you probably run into Phil here, nicknamed the Cat in the Hat. He's going to be here. He's such a cool guy, but just be respectful. That was a word. And I thought, isn't that cool to hear, staff who normally are talking about getting unruly and buying a tray of shooters to say, be respectful and enjoy what he's got here. Now, fast forward a couple of months, and a friend of mine says, hey, we're going out to celebrate. He was in the stock market, had a big win, and he said, we're going to Cafe Pacifico. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I'll get to see it in a different light. I mean, it was like a totally different place at that time of day, kind of after dinner, like between dinner and when I would normally have been there. Third time I go, my neighbor's having her birthday there. Again, a totally different experience, but still this beautiful, cool vibe. So that's kind of what I want to drill in today. Phil, I really consider you a person who can do that in a store, across 18 stores in 6 countries, and even on a minivan in Mexico, right? When you speak and the way you include people and the way you do things, I just find it absolutely remarkable. I think you're one of the best in the world at hospitality. So let's walk through Cafe Pacifico and tell me, I know Thomas got this started and then you came and it was this marriage of two. Tell us about the brand and what was the intention behind the brand?
Well, the whole original idea of Cafe Pacifico for Thomas, before I got involved, was a reason to legally stay in Amsterdam.
Okay.
And that was all it was. And in fact, he had no idea about making drinks or food or anything, but he just figured there was no Mexican anywhere that he knew of in Europe. He came from sort of Whittier, but in that East LA area, and he loved Mexico. So he set this place up, and I learned a lot from him. He was really my mentor. He was 10 years older than me. But the thing I really learned from Thomas was his skills with people and customers. And it was that attention to detail and being real. I mean, if you mess up, just be honest. You messed up. The worst thing is when you make a mistake in an order or you do something wrong in service. If you're straight up with the people, they can accept that. But when you try and give them the plumber story, like, oh, well, it's this folder or that folder or whatever, they all know it. And the big thing for me is when you have issues in the bar or the restaurant or whatever, it's not just so much how you deal with that customer. It is, of course, but it's how everyone around that customer sees you deal with them.
Right.
To make them feel comfortable. And if you deal with it well, then everyone feels great. If you don't deal with it well, then everyone's going like, whoa, it's like creates a really bad vibe.
Yeah.
One of the philosophies I had for Pacifico in Sydney was anyone can do anything they like. Like there's no rules. But in fact, everyone makes the rules because as soon as someone complains, then you got to stop.
Right.
But while everyone's having a good time, have a good time. Because one thing I always remember when I first came to Sydney, you go into a venue, people start getting a bit loud, they're having a bit of fun, and then the bouncer comes up and goes, hey, you, out. It's like, what the hell? You go out to have a good time. And so if you're not disturbing anyone, like everyone's in that mood, what's the problem? So I really focused on everyone. And it was also, once again, this came from Thomas. His principle was tight on bottom, loose on top. So tight on the bottom, everyone's got a job to do. You know what to do. You do the job. The job comes first. But you can have fun doing it. As long as you get the outcome, you get the job done, then you putting your own personality into it and embracing it. I mean, you won't not only feel good yourself, but it's good for the customer.
Right.
So
I
they're the
love it.
sort of things of just trying to create a good atmosphere for people and just, be welcoming, be open. You
Yeah,
could
I
be
love that.
someone with a lot of money. You could be someone with no money. It doesn't matter. Treat everyone the same. And in fact, a lot of times you get people come in that look like they've got no money, and they have probably got more money than the people who look like they've got $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Guys
just
like us,
never
right?
know.
Fat wallets and plaid shirts. Right. That could be your next book, Phil, right? Fat wallets and
Absolutely.
plaid shirts.
Yeah, totally that. So I think it was all about, just being, and, it's like that thing as well. When people have an issue, like something's wrong, whatever, don't try and fix the problem for them. Ask them what what they want.
Right. Right.
What would you like me to do?
Phil, you've hit on what I think is the most beautiful thing about hospitality, and it also makes it the most difficult until you get into your rhythm. In that you were saying that you could set up and kind of go about it, go and have fun and be loose and everything until you hit these boundaries, right? And then you'll get feedback from the market. And I had an amazing young woman work for me as a server, and she was new at it, and I was with her the first couple nights. She was doing great, and I came in a couple nights later, and she was like a totally different person, like a robot. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, I went to a table and did this, and they really pushed back, and they just didn't seem like they. And I said, well, what did you learn from that? She goes, well, I did it 10 times before with 10, and it was always cool. And I said, well, don't you see that you just got to read people, and they're just giving you feedback, right? It's not the end of the world. And it doesn't mean that we have to shut down and go now tight on top and tight on the bottom, right? You just got to accept the feedback and roll. And that's the beauty of hospitality.
And reading the customer. Like if you're on the bar, some people just want to sit there and don't want to be talked to. Get them the drink and they'll just sit there and leave them alone. And other people, all they want to do is talk. And, you could have like 3 or 4 conversations going on the bar, all up and down the bar as you're walking up and down. And it's like you're talking there and you're talking there, leave that guy alone. But it's really learning to identify what the customer wants. What's their vibe? Are they waiting for someone, or they're, melancholy, or they want to be, they want something to happen?
So Phil, how would you define hospitality? If you had a young person, you're welcomed into the bar, they're going to work for you and said, hey, we want to deliver this beautiful, remarkable hospitality. What is hospitality in your words?
I think hospitality, always think about how you would want to be treated. How would you like to be served? Because if you can think how you want it, then I think that's an easy way to present it to someone else. And of course, not everyone wants it the same as me, but it's still that principle of, is that going to make you feel comfortable? Be polite, have fun, or whatever. But it's that thing of being, like I said, tight on bottom, loose on top. You're there to do a job. And so, I think the biggest thing is meet and greet. When someone walks into a venue, that first 30 seconds is critical. You walk into a place, and even if the place is jamming and you're busy as hell, and you're standing there like, where do I go? What do I do? All you need is someone just to go, I'll be right with you. And you go. Right. Or you're standing at the bar, and there's like 20 people at the bar, and, you're standing like, me, and the bartender's going like, I got you. You go, okay, fine. He knows I'm here. It's those little things of recognition that make you suddenly go like, I don't need to put out all this vibe of, give me attention, because otherwise you're not seeing me. I know he's seen me. I know he'll get to me. And it's like when you're serving on a bar, you go one person here, the next person, next person, next person, next person, next person, back here, boom, 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 boom. Have a rhythm, put systems in place. And the other thing for me also is having really good systems which are easy to run. I mean, like for staff, I remember some rep was in the restaurant, and he was sitting there and he was trying to sell me wine or something like that. I can't remember, whatever. But he's sitting there, and staff started coming in, and he was just observing. And after a while, he's going, this is incredible. And I'm going, what's incredible? He said, your staff. They just come in and they're happy, and they're talking to each other, and they go and get a coffee, and they do this, and then they just go straight to work. It's not like, you have to be going, hey, I get to work, do this, do that. They know what they have to do. And you give them that responsibility. But, it's like an opening and closing checklist. This is something that management needs to put into place. If you've got a good opening checklist, all you have to do is you walk in and you just go tick, 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 tick. I'm open. And you don't have to think like, what haven't I done? Or what do I need to do? Make the job as easy for staff as possible, so then they can actually just get on with the job of delivering service, looking after the customer. making drinks, serving food, or making food, or whatever. It's
So
having
that's a great point, Phil. And I was at a new client. I just happened to be in their city in the last month, and one of their challenges is getting a lot of negative online feedback, which is, of course, is very harmful to a small business. And so I go in there, and it was, I don't know, 4 o'clock or so, and I just happened to get there when the pre-shift was starting. All the staff come in, running in with their hair on fire last minute. They're all on their phones, breaking up with a boyfriend or doing whatever you do on your phone right before a shift. And then the owner takes the opportunity to just like kick them all in the kidneys about something that had gone wrong. And he's like, all right, let's get to work. And I said to the guy, I'm like, how do you think that's going to work? Like, you want these folks to be happy and be oozing hospitality and delivering your playbook. And it's almost like they got slaughtered right before their shift. And it took them a minute to realize the correlation between the two. Pushing a Broadway show, you wouldn't beat up your actors and push them out on stage.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I love hearing you say just, getting folks ready. And you could feel that when you're at your restaurants. Phil,
I think
tell us.
another big thing as well is ask them to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. Lead by example. So, for example, one of my favorite jobs in the restaurant was on the bar as the bar back.
Right.
Because you're everywhere. You're on the bar, you're off the bar, you're seeing how the bar's running, you're giving your staff ammunition to make drinks and ice and, then new juice and fruit and this and that, all that sort of stuff. But you keep that, and you also see how your staff are working. But say, for example, then someone throws up in the toilet or there's a spill or whatever. Right. I prefer that I go and do that. I'll clean that up, and you guys stay on the floor and you look after the customer.
Right.
You get that food out. You keep this happening. When it comes to the point where actually I can't do it and I ask someone to do it, they have no problem to do it. Yeah. Because they know they've seen me do it enough times to just go, yeah, okay, no problem.
Yeah. Well, I love that, Phil. And the point about jumping in and playing a role, even if it's for an hour or two here and there. Another friend of mine a couple of years ago was at his bar, and he goes over to a guest at a high top, and he was about to pull the 2 glasses, and one glass just had a little bit left, maybe 10% in the bottom, and the guy had pushed it to him, so he knew he wanted him to take it away. And he said something to the effect of, you don't want the best sip. And he said, no, and then he gave him the answer. He said, no, it's been a bit too sweet. So he'd ordered something different. But then when he took that glass back, he brought the drink back to the guest and said, hey, I appreciate your feedback. This one's on me. And the guy said, hey, I didn't want a free drink. And he goes, hey, your feedback's invaluable to me. But had you not been in there, someone untrained would have just grabbed that glass and thought, oh, it's just been watered down a bit. But, there you go. You got some great feedback and a connection with the guest.
And that was a big thing with our place, because we would serve tequila, and sometimes really expensive tequilas, and there would be just a little bit in the bottom of the glass that someone's actually keeping for that last little taste. And you get the server come up and take it, and it's like, man, there's like $5 worth of drink right there, just gone. Yeah. So it was really always about, are you finished? Can I take this? You don't just take because you want to make it look clean. Just ask the customer.
Right.
And I mean, now, another thing on this food. So, for example, one of the big things for me is, if you're delivering food to the table, you come up, you put the food on the table, you walk away, you give them a second, and then come back and just go, is everything okay? Because by doing that, you give them time to see what they've got, work out if that's what they wanted, if everything is okay, and by you coming back and checking, you've got time to fix it. You've got time to change it or add something or take something away or do whatever before they go, oh, look, this isn't what I ordered.
Right.
So you already it's almost like you're signing a contract with them that they're going, I am happy with what you've given me.
And I agree 100%, Phil, and I think it's underrated, the check back in the appropriate amount of time. And I think in the check back, it's almost 80-90% body language too, right? If someone's just kind of pulled back from the meal a bit, or they're like cutting it and they're making, if I told my team, if they're not loving it, there's something wrong, right? We spent years on these recipes getting this food right. And if they're looking at it like I could do better at home, then we should do better in the restaurant.
Yeah. It's the same with drinks. Is your drink okay? Is it too sweet? Is it too sour? If it's too sour, you can sweeten it up. You just give it a little dash. If it's too sour or too sweet, you can add like a lime squeeze or something just to balance it back. I mean, those sort of little things are so easy to fix, and it's that added attention to detail that the customer feels like, yeah, thank you.
Right. I want to get back into hospitality in a second, but I need the audience to understand that there's like an element to Phil's life and his businesses that, you know, we know there's gin bars and there's whiskey bars and everything else, but I think it's something more with Agave for these guys. And you think about this spirit that was, you know, made very poorly for years. I know it was always made well somewhere, but what was exported and pushed into wells and bars was almost impossible for me to drink. And to go from that to what we consume today is, you know, there's nothing I'd rather drink, and neat as well, which is amazing. And the three people, I think, in my mind, most responsible for that transition and that exposure around the world to beautifully made tequila. You had Julio Bermejo in San Francisco, you had Thomas in Europe, and then you had Phil out of Sydney for Australasia, and kind of spreading that agave love. We all know about the axis of evil. This might be the axis of agave, right? These three guys around the world, this conduit pushing the stuff out. Like I said, my staff, who I, you know, my ego said I know more than they do, and I already told you I don't like tequila. They said, this is different. You know, come down the hill with us and try this stuff. So Phil, tell us a little bit about why agave was so important to you guys, and not just to get started, but it seemed to grow as it went with you.
It was funny because my first experience of drinking agave, or drinking tequila, and it's in my book, in my first book, is I think I took a tab of acid, drank a bottle of tequila with two other guys, and then ran to the pub and just off our faces. And it was like you shoot it and you drink it with the salt and the lime because you don't want to taste it.
Right.
I mean, It wasn't until I met Thomas and I really started going to Mexico, and then we started exploring the world of tequila and margaritas and all that sort of stuff, that I suddenly realized, man, there's really good tequila out there. And it's specific. Yeah. And a big part of that is sharing that passion. I think one of the things that attracted me to tequila, and I think Thomas and probably Julio as well in a way, is it's also got that bohemian sort of style about it. It's like the bad boy spirit, you know. Right. You think, like, for example, okay, you're in a bar, you're sitting there, and say there's a girl next to you or whatever, you go, hey, you know, can I buy you a drink? She says, yeah. And if she says, yeah, I'll have a gin tonic, you're going to think, oh, yeah, this is going to be very civilized. When she says, yeah, I want a tequila, you're going like, okay, this is going to be interesting. It's because of the spirit, because of that. Right. And in fact, on that same point, you know, having a tequila bar, we really needed to be careful that our staff knew how to serve tequila. The place didn't get out of control because people can go lose their minds on tequila. So it was very much that thing of being a unique spirit. It's also more of an up. It's like, even though it's not technically a stimulant, it is a stimulant. You know, all spirits, all alcohol is a depressant. But there's something about tequila that it's puts you on a high more than a drunk. And I think that was always something about it that made it really, attractive for all of us. And especially I know for Tom and I, that bad boy image, that bad boy spirit, you know, we go to all these rough ass cantinas in Mexico and get in all sorts of trouble and hell of a good time. It was like, that was part of the journey, you know, you didn't want to play it safe. Yeah. So I think then tequila became very civilized, and now, I mean, it's just on another level. And now there are so many brands of tequila coming out, and there are not so many new, like more producers. It's just the same number of producers just making a lot more brands. Right. Yeah. If that makes sense. It does. It's just the world has gone crazy on agave. And now even you're getting agave from Australia, you're getting agave from India, from South Africa, from, you know, even I was talking to Carl Rangel. He's, you know, they're making agave from agave syrup in Denmark, you know, distilling it. Yeah. It's like, it really has. It really has. But it's a special spirit. And it really is something. One of the other things for me is you have to educate people how to drink agave. So, for example, for me, I don't think it's great with wine. And I think one of the things, like we all know the Tommy's Margarita. Why is the Tommy's Margarita such a great drink? Because it's just pure agave with citrus. Yeah. You know, you're not adding the liqueur, the sugary sweet, the stuff that's going to give you that sort of hangover and headache. And that's right. Just easy, clean, nice for the body to process.
Yeah. Now, one of my
I
favorites.
don't know if I answered your question, but anyway,
No, you did.
talking.
No, you did. You did. It was great. So, Phil, if there was, let's say, a young bar owner about to get started, putting up all the family's money against this new business, and they had
Yep.
cold feet, and they said, "Listen, I don't know that we've got our hospitality strategy right," and you could send them to one bar in the world to really feel and experience hospitality as a customer that you know is reliable enough. Tommy's? Okay, so tell us about Tommy's.
And the reason I say Tommy's, it's not hip, it's not cool, but it's all about atmosphere. It's all about service. You walk in there and you feel at home.
Right.
And
so this is Tommy's Mexican restaurant in San Francisco, owned by the Mejo family, Julio and his family.
It's out on Gary. It's like, it's a long way out of town, but it is such a beautiful, but that for me is the epitome of hospitality. And Julio behind the bar, you got his mum, Elmi, on the host station, on the cash register. It's just beautiful. Now, if you're looking for something beyond that, I'd say maybe Sammy here in Australia with Stefano Catino.
Yeah.
I mean, front of house hospitality, going out of his way to make you feel welcome. Fun is a huge part of, which is what Pacifico was all about. We used to call it fun dining, not fine dining.
Okay.
But it's the thing, people go out to have fun. Okay, You want good food, have good food. You want good drinks, but add fun to the whole equation and you're laughing.
Right. So I love that, Phil, and it's a perfect segue into my next question. In designing a brand for hospitality, I think that as operators, we've got to make promises, unspoken promises to guests. So when they leave the place, I work with clients and say, write down 3 things that you're hopeful that a customer that came and spent 2 hours with you would tell somebody 2 months later. So Cafe Pacifico, one of the things is fun, right? So what else was Cafe Pacifico? What else would you want somebody to say about Cafe Pacifico? It's
good quality. It's great service. I mean, in fact, it used to be interesting because we used to get a lot of groups come in, and a lot of the we get groups of 20 people or something. It could be a birthday or whatever. You may have come with some of those groups or whatever. But it was that thing where people would come in after, when we first opened, in fact, it was interesting because Cafe Pacifico in Sydney is completely different to the one in London or what we had in Paris or Cologne or Milan or whatever. But it was that thing where we found when people finished eating, then they'd be sitting there and they go, well, what do we do now? And they get up and go. And so if I think Cafe Pacifico London or Paris or whatever, they would turn tables probably 3 times in a night. Pacifico would be lucky to turn them once. So I just said, you know what, we need to do something here. We need to keep the people there. So I did a couple of things. One is I didn't serve coffee.
Okay.
Even though we had a coffee machine and it was only for staff and the customer could see it. They go, can I have a coffee? No, it's only for staff. But as soon as you drink coffee, the night's over. It's like done. I want you to say keep drinking. But, we'd bring, after a certain time, like 10, depends on, you'd read the vibe, but after a certain time, we'd bring the lights down, we'd turn the music up, I got a good sound system. And then, even like sometimes we'd throw streamers and stuff like that and turn it into like a party atmosphere. And so we get these groups come in and they just go, yeah, we want to go to Pacifico. We have a great time, have a party. But then they'd say, but the food is really good. And the drinks are really good. Like they didn't expect it to be. Yeah. They expect it to be a fun place, but they expect it to be shitty, like cheap food. And, we make everything fresh on premise.
Right.
We make all the drinks, obviously, fresh juices. I mean, I don't know how many lemons and limes I would squeeze. In particular, boxes and boxes and boxes of fresh lemons. And, our house Margarita, we used to use lemon juice. It was beautiful.
Right. Yeah.
With all of the Pacificos, we used to use lemon juice because, limes cost an arm and a leg. And lemon in a Margarita if you're using triple sec or something like that, it's a beautiful balance. But the whole thing for me comes down to, good service, fun service, good food, good drinks, great atmosphere, good music, good temperature. I mean, it's all people wouldn't come to. In fact, I remember a chef one time, he split and he took the recipe book. And everyone's going, oh, my God, he's taken the recipe. What are we going to do? I said, I don't need to do anything because he can cook the same food we've got here anywhere and it will never taste the same. Because we're not selling food. We're selling the whole package. The temperature, the food, the music, the look of the place, everything is what makes it taste that way. It's not just one element.
I want to connect a few dots here, Phil. So, guys, if you're planning your hospitality strategy, I love the fun dining instead of fine dining, right? So he's proud of his food, made from scratch. That's like the secret weapon, right? No one expects it, but he's got it. But on the fun side, if that's what you want people to say 2 months after they leave, I had a really fun time there. And I tell you, that sells, right? Like, who doesn't say, oh, well, why? What happened? Now you're in a conversation. But going back to the impetus of a brand promise that it's going to be fun. So in order to do that, Phil then had to hire fun people. Right, you can't have a fun place without fun people. In my experience, in one of our strongest brand promise, say something like fun, it's the formula is 100, 20, and 2. You have to have 100 applicants that you would sit down and have a serious interview with 20 of them to select 2 people to deliver on that brand promise. Right, and if you do better numbers than that, you're really good at what you're doing. That's about what I had to do. We had to get 100 applicants to interview 20 to find 2 people to deliver on our brand promises. And then if we didn't set up the environment to do so, one of the posters we had in the back of house was no fat jockeys. We had a picture, a cartoon of a big fat jockey on a horse, and so you never see this at the Randwick races, at the Belmont Cup, right? If you have a racehorse that you want to win, you got to put, so that's the leader on duty who's running your business. And as Phil said, that person's encouraging the boundaries, right? Push up against the boundary. You want to be fun? What's fun to you might not be going far enough for the guests, but if it goes too far, you'll see it back again. And then if you do that right, you're going to get that knock-on effect of your guests talking about you 2 months later.
Yeah.
Does that connect the dots?
Definitely that. I think a big part of that also is making the job, not expecting the world from your staff, make it a job that's achievable. Right. Make it quite clear, this is what the job is, and this is your job description, and making them training we used to spend a lot of time on training. You train the staff, you build them up, and one of the biggest things, in fact, what you mentioned before was the induction or the hiring of staff.
Yeah.
I remember one of the best things, they can have the best CV, they can say this and that, but Yim, that she had a great attitude to this. They'd say, oh yeah, I've worked in restaurants, I can carry 5 plates, I can do this, I can do that. Say, okay, let's see you carry 3 plates, just do it. And straight away you can tell if they have experience in hospitality or not. Yeah. If they can carry 3 plates, they would just automatically go boom, 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 there you go. And if they haven't, they can say they have, but actually, and there's simple things that you can do just to check to see, you have got the skills. And having the skills, I think the big 3 things as well as it's knowledge, skills, and attitude. So knowledge you can gain, skills you can teach, attitude, if they don't have the attitude, you can't change that. They need the attitude to start with. So attitude is probably the most important thing in hiring. And
that's absolute paramount to this, Phil, is like whatever the attributes you want, the values that you want that are critical to your brand that you can't teach in your induction program, that you have to come with them. Like people would say, where do you find all these, or how do you do this? How do you create all these great people? I said, no, I just hire people that were well parented. Right. I want people that parents spend some time with them instead of just duct taping an iPad to their head for the first 15 years. But what we would say is, we wanted people that were kind, that were curious, and that were polite. Those are 3 things that we found we couldn't teach. And I would hire people. I made so many mistakes. 2 weeks later, I'd say, who is this person? Who hired this person? And they'd say, you did. And what I found is that people are really good at acting at interviews, right? Yeah. So, and spend at least 10 or 15 minutes with the day bartender. In that 10 or 15 minutes, you'd find out if someone was kind, curious, and polite. A lot of people would just blow the person off, wouldn't talk to them, be messing around on their phone. I think if you want to be here 40 hours a week, aren't you curious about what it's like here? And don't you want to meet this person? And, so that we'd get a sort of really sign on the way in. Yeah. Yeah, that's
a really simple test right there. And they don't even know they're being tested.
No.
They say hire slow, fire fast.
Right.
And it's that thing as well. We've had staff that we thought would be really good. We put them in there with the team, and they were like a cancer.
Right. Yeah.
And everyone, like the whole mood changed because it's a team. And it was like, as soon as you get that, doesn't matter how good they are, out.
Absolutely.
Because the team is paramount.
Right. So, Phil, all those years in all those bars, what's the single most important lesson you took away regarding hospitality?
Single, wow.
If you were to be advising a young person to kick something off and said, hey, you got to make sure you do this or don't do that.
I think be willing and keen to learn. It's just gain new skills, learn as fast as you can. I mean, if you're a young person and you're going into the industry, why do you want to go into the industry? What's the reason for you to do it? Do you want to be in that industry, or is it just a stepping stone to do something else? Both are completely valid. But if you're going to just be going in there because you're going through school and you're there for a year or two and you're going to become a doctor or a priest or whatever, still commit yourself. You have to just go, I'm there because I want to do this. And if you're doing that for that reason that you want to do it, then you're going to do it with love, with passion, with genuine ability.
Right. And
I think that's probably the most important, is that you want to do it because you want to do it, not because you have to do it.
Right. Yeah. And I love that, the part about continuously learning and being curious. The trip I was on last year with Phil in Mexico, it's a lot of the folks on it were agave experts. Phil right at the top of that pack. And Phil's the guy I saw taking the most notes, asking the most questions with the distillers. Bus is getting ready to go and we're looking for Phil, who's still learning. And I tell you, after all these years, like, that curiosity doesn't seem to have dampened.
I've been going to Mexico for 40 years, and each time I go, I still learn something I didn't know. It's just, it doesn't stop. But yeah, being curious and that willingness to learn. I mean, I think one of the great things I love, for example, with tequila or rum or whatever, I mean, finding the history behind tequila or rum or mezcal, or, what's the history behind this brand, or, what's the history behind this cocktail, this drink. There's all those stories is what makes it really passionate. And you can then use that story to communicate to the customer. I mean, if you think of rum, I always think pirates,
right?
And it just tastes so much better.
Yeah, right.
When I'm thinking tequila, I'm thinking bandidos, and it's like, it's like the romance of the spirit. It's not just the spirit itself.
Phil running from the bandidos is what I think.
Yeah, I've done that a few times, I can tell you.
I didn't know she was with you.
Yeah, wow. Especially with Thomas, man, we had a few of those.
I bet. Back to Cafe Pacifico. What's an example of things that you guys did on a regular basis for guests that the guests really felt, man, this is above and beyond, like this, and something that you could systematize that could happen regularly?
A classic on this happened with a guy from Boston. He worked for a pharmaceutical company. He would come in on a midweek night. It would be quiet. He would come to the bar. He would sit at the bar, and he'd come in, and it would be like, hi, Mike, how you doing? As soon as you saw him, it would be 2 Pacifico beers on ice, in the ice well.
Right.
Make him a margarita. He would have a margarita. Then he'd have 2 beers. Then he'd order enchiladas. And then he'd have another margarita. And then he'd go home. And I remember him he came in a few times. And I remember you saw him, you go, well, I know what he's ordering. So you just straight away do it.
Right.
And then he said, he lived in Paddington. And he would go to these bars around in Paddington. He'd go there every week. He'd come into our place once or twice a week. And he'd say, I go into those places, same people, and I'd look at them and they'd look at me like it was the first time I'd ever been there. He'd walk into Pacifico and it was just like he felt at home. Hi, Mike. Boom, boom, chips, salsa, done, this, that. It was like a rhythm. If he wanted something different, he'd say it, but that was his rhythm. And it's just learning and giving recognition to the customer. And even if you can't remember their name, it's just like, hey, great to see you back. Yeah. That recognition. And like I said, it's the thing of, when you walk into a place, just having someone just go, I see you. I've got you. I'll be with you in a second. Right. Or, take a seat at the bar. We'll be right with you. And then when they've finished, thanks for coming in. I mean, it's recognition. It's just thank you. Yeah. One thing I really found interesting, I was talking before about, how you resolve situations with customers. There was one customer, there was a couple, American couple, and they would come in, and one night, it was busy, she was served enchiladas, chicken enchiladas. Now, she was a vegetarian, and she ate half of the enchiladas. She'd been drinking margaritas, and before she realized that she was eating chicken, and she was crying at the table. She was really like, what do we do here, man? This is like, anyway, took time with them, was really genuine with them, like you can't take it back, but they became our best friends, our best customers, and they came right in when we first opened, and they were there for probably 15, 16 years. They came into Pacifico. And they brought so many of their friends and customers and whatever. But it was that thing. And the great thing was everyone around observed how that was resolved. And in the end, they were so happy.
Yeah.
They're those little things of resolving situations.
Yeah.
And now I remember one night, we also had a group come in, and it was like 15 people. This guy who was really insistent, I have to come in. I'm with the media, and it's my birthday. And I said, well, we're already booked out. We've got a booking already for 8 o'clock for that table. Yeah. We'll be in. I said, well, you have to be in at 6. That gives you 2 hours to order, eat, and you're going to have to go. He's going, yeah, no problem. So 6:30, they're just starting to trickle in. What the hell is going on? 7 o'clock, they're sort of all hanging out at the bar. I said, guys, you need to sit down at the table. You need to get your order in. And in fact, I actually just put them on a set menu, and I put orders in just to get food happening, because otherwise there's no way by the time they get to the table and then they place their order, and then it's going to be like, 9 o'clock. Well, as it was, it got to 8:30, and I'm just going, and the other group have already turned up, and I'm going, okay, you guys, like the other groups here. Yeah. It's okay. Don't hassle us. We're here, it's fine. They'll be fine. They can wait. And I'm just going, it was really cool. And in the end, I go, you guys get out of here.
Right.
I know they want to see. And they go, you can't do that. We're media. I say, I don't care who you are. If you don't have respect for my venue and my customers, the people who booked ahead, and I let you in on special condition that you come in and out, you can move to the bar, but I need this table. This is totally disrespectful. And what I didn't know was that the group that had come in, they were all standing behind me, and they're all going, yay. I'm going,
right.
I just go, you guys out. I don't care if you're media or what. There's totally no respect.
You see, this is the number one rule my staff told me. You can come down, we're going to have a good time, but you got to be respectful, right? That's what they told me about Cafe Pacifico. So it's full circle. Hey, Phil, I want to just go back on the point you said, and part of the goal of this podcast is breaking down hospitality, because it is tricky to do right and consistently. And you mentioned, really delighting somebody by just not only recognizing them, remembering their order, like making them feel welcome and special and important. And I can understand how good that feels. And I believe the opposite has the same, but opposite effect, right? When you feel you're supporting a business, you're choosing it over others. You might have been let down a couple times, but you keep coming back, and then staff don't even recognize you, right? Like it's that to me is what I try to help some of the people that I'm working with understand, that it can be devastating. You're quietly devastated that like, oh, is this how? No, am I that unimportant? And the example I gave the other day was that's right, yeah. And the example I gave the other day is that a young woman who worked for me one of my restaurants as a host. Again, she was new and getting started, been through the induction, and I came in one day and she looked like a deer in the headlights, and I pulled her aside and said, what's wrong? And she goes, I've already screwed up 3 times tonight. I kind of got lit up by customers. And I said, wow, really? What happened? She was amazing, bubbly, super smart. And she said, I just asked if they had been here before. And, these are people that were invested, right? That felt just like, and they're in front of their friends, dragging their friends in there. And then it's like, I know the customers because I went and looked at the tables. None of them wanted to be a big shot. They just didn't want to be invisible. And it wasn't her fault, right? But it happened. And what we did from then was, like, if we had someone new, they'd say, hey, I'm Sean. I'm new here. Delighted to see you. Do you come here often, right? That's a very different question than have you ever been here before? And then people would say they haven't been here. And we started taking our wine menu. We had 3 different colors on the top of the wine menu. If they were new, they were one color. If they had been here a few times that they weren't a regular, it was another. And then we had a 3rd color. And that way, when they got to the table, someone would know that these are regulars, right? If we had new staff at the table, that way the manager on duty could come over and say, hey, here's a regular. Hey, guys, great to see you again, right?
And what that does for the customer, what that does for the customer's guests who they've brought in, how does that make them feel? They feel like
exactly
they know me here. It's like that classic you see, someone turns up at the club and they go, yeah, I know the owner, let me in.
Right.
And they go, oh, well, everyone knows the owner, but no one really knows the owner. Yeah. But it's that simple scenario of that recognition of like, really nice to see you guys back. You know, if you know them by name or whatever, just having that recognition, you know, here, let me put you on this table. Those things make a huge difference.
Yeah. I was young enough owning bars and restaurants that I used to work the door and people would say, I know the owner, let me in, and go, yeah, what's he like?
Yeah,
I didn't dress the part, but
it's so funny, isn't it? It's like, it is and they think that gives them carte blanche. That's it. You're in, right. You know the owner. Great.
Yeah. I just got a couple of last questions for you, Phil. What's the most rewarding moment in your career so far? I know you got a long way to go, but you've done so many cool things. Like,
I think when they made me an official Mezcal ambassador, that was something pretty out of the ordinary. I was not expecting that at all. I was running, after I closed Cafe Pacifico, because they were going to demolish the building, then I started doing this series of tours like Agave Love. And I did the first one in Sydney. I had 25 Mexicans come out from tequila, mezcal, bacanora, sotol, whatever. And I had 46 blind tastings and talks in 10 venues over 2 days.
Wow.
And it was crazy, but it was awesome. It was so crazy. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then the next year I did Singapore, Macau, Hong Kong. And then the year after that, I did Helsinki, Minsk, St. Petersburg, and then Tokyo, Japan and other places around. At one stage, the CRM, the Consejo Regulador for Mezcal, they were there and they said to me, Phil, we want to make you an ambassador. And the tequila chamber had said that to me in 2007 when I was with Thomas in south of France. We have to make you a tequila ambassador. Well, of course, it never happened.
Right.
So when the Mezcal boys said that, I'm going, yeah, right, whatever.
Right.
Thank you very much. That's great. And then they send me a letter, like, a formal letter, like, you have to be here on this date, blah, 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 to earn your recognition. And then I was thinking, like, it's going to be in some hotel in Oaxaca or something like that. It was in this tiny little pueblo, way out, like 3 hours out of Oaxaca City.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was so funky, man. It was great.
Is that where the title comes from?
Well, this is tequila. Thomas is the tequila ambassador. Right. So he's an official ambassador by the CRM.
And you're a Mezcal ambassador. Yeah.
And I'm a Mezcal ambassador. So it was the CRT for tequila, it was the CRM for Mezcal.
Yeah.
And then so the other moment was when I got recognized here in Sydney for the Australian Bar Awards for outstanding contribution. That was 2009.
Yeah.
That was really something special because our bar was not the coolest. It wasn't, the slickest, the fanciest. It was a cantina. It was wild and crazy. But to receive that award was really something very special for me and unexpected.
Yeah. Well, you deserve it, Phil. Last question for you, my friend.
Yeah.
I always say to my kids, we try to practice an attitude of gratitude, and we try to think of people that we owe a debt of gratitude to that maybe we haven't expressed fully. And I know you've taught a lot about hospitality. You've learned a lot about hospitality. Who's the person who you feel you owe a debt of gratitude to, and tell us why?
Well, it have to be Thomas. Simply because Thomas was a person who really taught me about hospitality. He taught me about attention to detail. He taught me about the customer and the staff and the philosophy, basically, of hospitality. And we traveled a lot. We went to a lot of different bars and restaurants to experience how other people did it, learn from them as well, And I think it would have to be Thomas simply because I spent so much time with him and we had so many amazing experiences, both good and bad, and just seeing how all that sort of stuff went down, whether it worked or it didn't work. When I think with Cafe Pacifico in Sydney, opening that, and that was my first venue to actually run as hospitality, not just as an artist. It was such a fast learning curve. We lost so much money when we first opened. I was with the wrong partner. We didn't have a good lease. There were all these things that were just negatives against us. Through the experience I'd had with Tom and opening all the other venues and seeing how they succeeded or didn't, I think that just gave me the belief that, this thing works and you just got to persist and do it with love. Just do it.
Well, you guys did amazing things together, and you've got the receipts to prove it, which I love, in the books that you're producing. Before I let you go, as I build this podcast, who do you recommend that I speak to in the future regarding hospitality? Who do you think we can learn from?
Well, I mean, Julio's an obvious.
Yeah.
Obviously, simply because for me, you look at this guy in marketing, in customer service, in drinks knowledge, I mean, he studied, what was it?
What did he study? He was at, I think,
diplomacy or something like that. What was it?
Maybe.
Something.
Yeah.
I think he's a no-brainer. But if I think someone else, I think even Stefano Catino. He's an amazing character for what he's achieved. He opened maybe Frank, then he did maybe Sammy, then he did Dean and Nancy, and then he's opened a Mexican place here. But his attitude to, he used to work with Marco Ferrone, who had the Island Bar, and he also had Hello Sailor.
They worked together.
He was Marco's main man on the Island Bar, and that place was incredible. Even Marco Ferrone,
Yeah, Marco, I was with Marco in Italy recently. Yeah. Well, those are great ideas, man. I appreciate it.
I have to say thank you to you, because what you are doing with these podcasts and what you do with your trainings and education is so important for people to access knowledge, because it's not just reading books. It's, having these experiences, having people like yourself with experience, sharing knowledge. It's a very important skill that you have and that you share.
Thank you very
much. Appreciate it from this side as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you being someone who's taught me and someone who's become a friend. And I really look forward to connecting with you. Actually, are you going to be in Sydney over Christmas, December, early January?
Yeah.
I'm going to see Ali and I are going to come. Might spend Christmas there.
Let's have some margaritas on the roof.
Let's do it, brother. Thanks for being our guest, Phil. I really appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, brother. See you soon.
You take care, amigo. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for all those who are listening to this.